Alright, so today we're going to take the factory fuel tank on this J20, which is in pretty piss poor condition, and we're going to move it from the original mounting place to the rear of the truck, and I'll explain to you why here in a minute. But anyway, yeah, this is a pretty simple task in all honesty. Um, so have fun watching. Okay, so when I bought this J20, it came with a factory fuel tank. It is in less than desirable condition, but we're going to try to get some use out of it. Um, just because anybody that messes with full-size Jeeps at all knows that the fuel tanks now, you can only get plastic ones, and they are ludicrously expensive. I think when I did the one on the J10 over there, uh, I think all in all for the parts that I bought, I spent close to $400, and nothing lined up right, and it's cobbled together, but it works. So, that being said, what today's video is going to be is not necessarily about installing a fuel tank in the factory position, but we're going to be changing things up a bit. So, the factory tank mounts right there in that skid pan, and then your straps would bolt up to the bed along with that bracket. Well, we ain't got no bed, and the thing that I'm trying to do with this truck, I would like to build a small dump truck with it. I know it's not the most capable thing in the world, but I like Jeeps. Easy way to have a cheap a Jeep dump truck, and it'll do most of the small things that I'll need it to do. So we're a long way from that there happening, but one of the things we have to address to get this truck in that direction is the fuel system on it. And up till now, since the dad brought it home, I've been using a 2-liter Diet Coke bottle for a fuel tank to move it around here in the driveway. And I'm getting a little bit tired of that, and it ain't the best, so we're going to affix something a little bit more permanent. And we're going to go ahead and address the issue of build this into a dump bed. The lift ram assembly is going to have to bolt to that higher cross member there in the middle. That whole assembly is going to have to live right there, and it's not going to be able to live there with the fuel tank in the factory position. So that position is an absolute no-go. Now, common thing that people do with these trucks is they take like a square body Chevrolet Suburban fuel tank and mount it here in the back. That's essentially what we're going to do, but we're going to mount the factory fuel tank back here, and we're going to mount it sideways so that the filler neck still comes out the side of the truck instead of out the back. Hopefully we'll be able to get the filler neck situation figured out when or if in the future we either build a dump bed for the truck or buy a dump bed and attempt to install it on the truck. Regardless, I think this is going to work. So we're going to mount the tank sideways in this general area. I think what we got to have, obviously, we can drill here in this rear cross member and put a bolt for the straps to hold it up. But we need to have another piece of metal going across. So I've got a piece of angle iron. I think I can cut it down and make it work. So that's going to be the first step in this process is I'm going to cut that piece of angle iron and lay it across there and see where we need to go with it. I'll update you when I get it cut. Okay, I got our piece of angle iron cut here. We're a little long on this side, but I can take care of that with the grinder. We're going to bolt that to the top rail of the frame. It's notched so you can get it over the flange there. It's spaced 20 inches exactly from the edge of this rear cross member to the edge of the piece of angle iron. So our tank should sit right down in here. Now, there's a few things that I don't particularly like about putting the tank here. One, stuff kicking up off the rear tire coming through the side of the tank. Tank's not in pretty good shape. It's very it's very rusted on the bottom. Need to reduce the ability to get pinholes in it some way. So at some point, we're going to probably adapt that skid pan to mount underneath this tank, or at least a deflector around the bottom of it. The other thing that I don't like is it's going to be towards the back. You know, if you drag the truck, the ass end of the truck on anything, potential of running a rock through the bottom of the tank or this, that, and the other. Now, that being said, I don't think that the tank is going to sit any lower than this homemade hitch that somebody has on here. That sits pretty low anyway. But for the purposes of if I keep this truck and if I build the dump bed for it, I think this location of the tank will be safe for 90% of what the truck's going to be doing. If it was going to be going off road or something like that, we would make sure we had a good skid pan under it. But I think we're going to be okay for today. So here's the tank that came with the truck. On the top side here, looks to be in pretty good shape. Now I've already cleaned this pickup up, but you can get a good idea how just rusty it was on the inside of that tank. I've cleaned it with a couple of gallons of old gas that's been sitting in the generator, so I didn't have to spend any money on this expensive stuff. And when I do spend money, it's at least going to be going in the generator. The other thing that we're going to do to give us some help, hopefully, we're gonna go ahead and remove that screen off this pickup. It's got a split in it anyway, so we'll probably try to slide that off there and put a piece of fuel line on the end. Screen's not going to help us in this situation. It's just going to clog up, cause an issue. We're going to be this truck does get to driving condition ever. We're going to be changing daggone disposable fuel filters left and right for a while after we begin operating it. But probably change a few just here idling around the driveway. So now the bad thing about this tank is it does hold fuel. It doesn't appear to leak. Boy, she's a bit crusty here on the bottom and pitted real good. It's almost like you could stick your finger through it or something, but for as expensive as these daggone tanks are, we're just going to run it like this. The truck's in such rough shape. It has value, don't get me wrong, because they're hard to come by, but it's not worth spending the extreme cost for a replacement fuel tank. So anyway, we got to drill some holes in that bracket, get it mounted to the frame, and then we'll try to shoehorn this thing down in there. Got a little used oil here to lube our drill bit. Double check our measurement. Make sure that we're at 20. Good. There's our first hole in. You're gonna have to let this battery charge while I run to the hardware store to get bolts for this. Alright, drill this hole for the other side. Now we got our holes drilled. I'm gonna wire wheel that stuff up and shoot it with a little touch of paint. And then we'll go ahead and install the bolts and that crossbar we made. Then we'll test fit our tankaroo in there. Alright. got that hose down with some paint. Let it dry, we'll bolt that thing in place. Alright, we got our piece bolted in there. One bolt on each side will be just fine. We're going to kind of pre-position our tank down in here and see what we've got to do to see where we've got to drill these holes to mount these straps at. That one I kind of already pre-done. This one here, somebody torched the bolts. We're going to have to cut these bolts off of it before we can do anything with this. We're going to shoot for about right there. And I'll tell you why we're going to do it about right there. It's just a touch higher than the rails on the bed. And no matter what I do with the bed on this, whether it be a flat bed or a dump bed, it's going to have to be made out of some channel. And the bed is going to have to sit at least 3.5, 4 inches higher than the high spot on that frame rail. So we're just about level with the highest point in the frame rail where the tank's sitting now. It's also about a good location for our fill neck and stuff to come out. So we're going to go for that right there. So the next thing we're going to do is drill our holes to bolt the straps in. And then once we do that, we'll cut what's not being used in the tank straps off. And we'll have it set in there. Now, the next thing that we'll have to do is I'll have to get another gas tank strap. And I want to run a strap through the same bolt holes across the top of the tank. Because right now you're helping with down, but you ain't helping with up. So, anyway, I want to get to doing some drilling, and we'll be about done with this. Alright. There's all 4 of our holes drilled. I'll install the bolts. And we'll be moving onward. Okay, so there's our tank mount in place. We still have to run all the fuel lines. I also went ahead and finished the patch. Went ahead and bolted a piece of plate to the top of the frame rail here, and then welded it to our other piece of plate on the outside of the frame. But there's our tank mount system, how we're going to mount the tank. Going to put one more tank strap across the top there, back through those 2 bolt holes. I have it in there in the garage, but I don't know. We'll see how long this tank lasts. The rubber piece on the bottom of the sending unit that holds the net was split, so I took it off and shoved a piece of fuel line up on it. That's not really the best thing to do, but this tank is just literally, we're going to use this to just get this thing moving around the driveway. We're going to have to figure out some other system or another tank before this thing hits the road, because man, it is just rusty as can be on the inside. And I cleaned it the best I could, stuck some gas in it with a chain, shook it around for about 30 minutes, dumped it out, did that 3 or 4 times. The gas never got any cleaner coming out of it, and just wasn't going to waste a bunch of fuel doing that. So, okay, I was able to save myself some money here. So these 2 hoses are the factory hoses for this tank. I stopped on the way home and got a piece of 1-inch fuel hose that was 3 foot long and 2 foot of 3/4 fuel hose. Now, I'm gonna go ahead and have to replace this piece of 3/4, but I was able to save myself about $50 here because that comes in a 3-foot joint. Should be able to return it since it didn't come off of a roll. And all I did on this hardened up factory hose, now this won't last very long. I'm not saying it's in great shape, but end goal here is to be moving around the driveway. So this will work for a filler neck for now. I was able to dip that in brake fluid, let it soak for about 10 minutes on each end, and then lightly heat it with a MAP gas torch, just enough to get the rubber soft. And was able to slide it with some anti-seize onto the tank and onto the filler neck. So probably not the best thing for the health of the hose, but it's saving me some money. Now, there's no way you can return that 2-foot piece that I cut, so I'm gonna go ahead and replace that. They cut that off the roll. They're not gonna take that back. But that other one, that ship was like almost $15 a foot for a 3-foot section. So I was crying in my beer a little bit about having to buy that just to use 1.5 foot of it. So anyway, I'm going to replace this piece of 3/4, and then I'll show you what I got when I'm done. Okay, fuel supply line is hooked up. Fuel return line's hooked up. The vent tube and the fill tube are hooked up into this fill housing. We're going to have to make a bracket at some point in the future for this right here that will come out, and we'll mount this to it and get it bent into position. Probably something close to like that. It probably won't be until after we have a bed on it. All this back here could get played with whenever we go to put a bed on it. Just don't know. But for right now, it'll get it around in the driveway. Installed an inline filter here. Easily changeable. Should filter all that trash out before it has a chance to get to the pump. I'm sure we're going to be changing that a bunch if this thing runs much and then moving it around here. So anyway, I gotta go up here and address one leak that I was having on the return side of things before we started all this, and then we should be able to fire this puppy up. She's looking at the fire herself, but she's running off her own gas tank now. Take a look at the filter. Actually, really isn't that bad. I'm surprised. I figured it already sucked a bunch of shit in there. Boy, fixing a few vacuum leaks really helped.